Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is January 24th, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. Title of today's podcast is Trial Day Number 3, House Managers, because the House Managers have rested, if you will, from their opening arguments. They will be able to speak again, most likely during a question and answer session, which should take place next week. Depending on if the Senate is going to allow questions of the senators. Of course, they're not going to be able to ask them themselves orally. What they will be doing is they will draft them in writing and then turn them over, submit them to the Chief Justice, who is presiding. And I do believe he will be the one who reads the questions, or it will be given to a clerk within the Senate. And then both sides, the House members, the House managers, and the White House counsel will be able to answer those questions. Now, this, of course, assumes that is what takes place. That's what's supposed to take place. We still don't know what will transpire in regards to witnesses. If witnesses will even be allowed, we'll probably see that drama next week. First, to some market performance, we have the U.S. factory activity growing the least in 3 months. The IHS Markit U.S. Manufacturing PMI Purchasing Managers Index fell to 51.7 in January from a reading of 52.4 in December and below expectations of 52.5. Although output continued to rise at a moderate pace, new business growth was only marginal as both domestic and foreign client demand softened. Also, job creation was the smallest in 4 months and price pressures eased. The least U.S. factory activity in 3 months, 51.7. Still above that level of 50, so it is expanding, but at a slower rate. And that's exactly what you would see if you took me up on it and went to the Federal Reserve's economic website and typed in all those keywords. That's exactly what you would have seen on a year-over-year basis in industrial production and manufacturing. And you would have seen that with a whole host of other issues as well. On the flip side, U.S. services sector grows the most in 10 months. Rose to a level of 53.2 in January of this year, from 52.8 in the previous month, beating market expectations of 52.9. So a reading of 53.2, the strongest in 10 months on the services side of the ledger. To the stock market, there was again another little bit of a scare, at least headline-wise, with this coronavirus. Some more confirmed cases of the coronavirus in other parts of the world. I know there were a few cases confirmed in France, and I do believe a couple more in the United States as well, and the number continues to rise in China. So be mindful of this. It can spread very quickly, and it's basically global at this point. So it's something to be mindful of. The president did take to Twitter today to encourage the public, the general public, that this will be contained, that President Xi of China is doing all that he can within his power to contain it. I hope that's the case. I honestly do. I mean, this is killing people. We don't want this to spread. I mean, as of right now, at least this is what the Chinese are telling us, with about 10 cities under quarantine, which we mentioned yesterday. I guess that's a total of about 46 million people. 46 million. That's about the size of California, if I'm not mistaken. 46 million people under quarantine. How easy do you think that is to manage? Not that much. So all the power be to President Xi to protect this and the Chinese people, because you don't want this spreading, because it can spread out of control. And don't forget, it's the Chinese Lunar New Year. So there's a bunch of people that are traveling, a bunch of people who have been traveling back and forth in preparation to go see family, go see friends, whatever the festivities are. So this is a very busy time of year. And when you're talking about a population of 1.4 billion people, this can get out of hand very quickly. 46 million people, if you look at it from a numbers perspective, on a population of 1.4 billion is a drop in the bucket. Not to be so harsh, but just saying from a numbers perspective. Here in the United States, that would be significant. It'll be significant there, but you get what I'm saying from a numbers perspective. So the markets, of course, didn't like it. They sold off. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gave back 166 points for the day, down 0.6%. The S&P 500 gave back 30 points, down 0.9%. of 1%. The NASDAQ 100 gave back 71, giving back 0.8%. And the Russell 2000, the small cap index, was down over 1% for the day. Some positive headline news over in Europe gave a 1% increase to the FTSE market, the UK markets. Also in Germany, France, and Italy, although France was up 0.8%. On the commodities front, crude oil continued to fall. We have WTI trading at $54.21 a barrel. Brent is trading at $60.66 a barrel, down over 2% each. Natural gas also dropped another 2%. It is now trading at $1.87. $1.87 per million BTUs. Again, folks, pay attention to this, because if these prices stay low for a long time, the companies in this industry are going to suffer. There will be bankruptcies. There will be restructurings. It's going to happen. We're already seeing it. We saw this big time during the mini recession that we experienced in manufacturing and mining back in 2014, 15, and 16, sort of a little bit of a carryover there. But now it's back. It is back, and it's coming back, and we're going to see this, I believe, in a much larger way. Of course, if I'm wrong and Bridgewater is correct and that the business cycle is dead, well, then maybe I'm wrong. They're right. We'll see what happens. But if the current trend continues, it's going to continue to the downside, and with it, most likely, the rest of the economy with it this time. This time. Because I do think that central banks are out of ammunition. I think diminishing marginal returns have kicked in. That's why they're putting the pedal to the metal like they never have before, because they have to for that very reason. They don't have to, of course. They could be truthful. They could be honest with us, but that's pretty much not an option in their playbook. So be mindful and be prepared. We also have gold up about 0.6% today, trading at $1,572 an ounce. Silver caught a little rally, up 1.6%, now trading at $18.07. Of course, somewhat of a flight to safety in the bond market. Uncle Sam's 10-year Treasury is now yielding 1.74%. Recall, it wasn't that long ago that yields were at 1.8, 1.9%. They were back down to 1.74. And I believe even earlier intraday, they were 1.68, 1.69. So a flight to safety, which I guess is understandable given the headline news with the coronavirus. But we'll see what happens. The markets don't like oil being down for too long. It's the lifeblood, the military-industrial complex, all that stuff. But guess what? Supply and demand exists. And we've seen some external geopolitical shocks strike the oil market. Not so much the natural gas market. Natural gas has pretty much been resilient. It's been on a steady decline for several months now. Oil, a little bit more volatile in regards to these geopolitical strikes and risks that we've seen, particularly in the Middle East. And they've come back down to earth. Why? Because of those fundamental supply and demand characteristics that are at play, and then obviously some slight de-escalation, at least in the headlines, between the United States and Iran and some other players within the Middle East. Of course, I take a little umbrage with that, whether it's truly de-escalation, because we've upped the ante on further economic sanctions, which I view economic sanctions, especially to this degree, as an act of war, because I try to look at things from every perspective. And if these types of economic sanctions were placed on the United States, I can almost assure you, almost guarantee you, that we would declare war on that country or those countries that would do such a thing to us to that degree. Just saying. Putting that out there. Put yourself in the other person's, other country's shoes. We wouldn't like it one bit. They don't like it. And, it's causing a whole host of problems, which is understandable. The people are upset. People are rallying. People are protesting all over the Middle East, all over the world. They continue. They were in Baghdad again, shouting for the Americans to leave. Now, not likely going to happen, especially given the remarks recently from Donald Trump that he wants paid back for all the things that we've done in Iraq. That's not going to happen either. So that's all it is. It's again, a lot of strong men around the world sitting around a poker table, playing cards. Who's going to blink first? That's all this is. That's all it is. Doesn't have to be like that, but it is. So pay attention. So that's some of the market news. We'll continue to keep you updated on a whole host of issues regarding that. And also, just so you know now, I'll just lay this on you now, and I'll remind you at the end, too. Obviously, a podcast this evening. Despite the fact that the White House counsel will be putting on their presentations over the next few days. I unfortunately will not be able to do a week ahead segment on Sunday, and I probably will not be able to do a show on Monday. If I can do one on Monday, I most definitely will, but I am traveling this weekend. I will not be able to do a week ahead segment, but do your best to pay attention, flip through the stations. Don't just listen to Fox, don't just listen to CNN, don't just watch MSNBC, flip through them all, get different coverage, get different analysts' opinions of what's going on. I know for the most part, anytime I've turned on Fox News over the past few days, most of the analysis is pretty much the same talking points that comes out of the White House, which is not good, folks, because unfortunately that's not the truth. It's not the truth with the facts and evidence. It's not the truth with the witnesses that have come forward. It's not truth with the documents that have been released to the public and are in the public domain. It's just not. And it pains me to say that because, you know, I expect to some degree my government to lie to me. That's par for the course. I expect the President of the United States, not just this one, but all of them, to lie to me to some degree. The degree of the falsehoods and the outright lies that come out of this White House are disgusting. They're despicable. They're a disgrace. There's no other way to put it. This is not spin. This is just the facts of the case. Now, unless they are going to wow and awe me over the next few days, which I don't think is going to take place because there's not likely going to be a defense of the president because you can't. There's no defense of his actions. He doesn't. All he says is it's perfect. That's it. He didn't even have a defense. He was waiting for some of the testimony to sort of, well, Ambassador Sondland said no quid pro quo on a phone call with him after he knew about a whistleblower. Of course he's going to say that. I want nothing. I just want Zelensky to do the right thing. That's not what he was saying before that. He wanted the investigation, at least the announcement of it. Don't be confused. Don't be distracted by the shiny objects that the White House counsel is most likely going to be flashing before us. Pay attention to the facts. You don't like Adam Schiff? Me neither. Too bad. Don't pay attention to his style, to his language, what he's done before. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. Just like people that might not like people on the White House counsel. You don't like Jay Sekulow? You don't like Pam Bondi? Too bad. Doesn't matter. What they've done before doesn't matter. Pay attention to the facts of the case. And that's likely going to be the argument and the quote-unquote defense of the White House counsel is not to actually come out with a actual defense of the president. What they're likely going to do is they're going to attack, deny, repeat, repeat. And guess what? It's been effective. It's been effective. Fox News should be ashamed of itself for not having the entire opening arguments from the House member side. I know they've put on their usual programming at various hours. Because I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, if this was the impeachment of Barack Hussein Obama, it would have been plastered wall to wall. Okay? And it might have been the flip. It might have been the reverse on MSNBC. Maybe they only would have focused on so much and it would have been their regular programming. But guess what? If I was doing this podcast in that scenario, if you know me by now, you know I'd be complaining about that too. That I'd be calling that out as well. This is something that's only happened a few times in the history of this country, and thank goodness. It's not supposed to happen that often, if at all. But it has. And the American people have the opportunity and should have the opportunity to watch it. And the fact that Fox News has not kept it on, to me, is a huge disservice to their viewership. Instead, they kept, promoting the talking points from the White House. Let the people decide. Let the people decide. Let them hear the facts of the case, because most of them are not going to do it. Okay, you hear senators, especially on the Republican side, complaining, why does the House manager, why do they keep repeating and everything? Because a lot of people don't understand what's going on. A lot of people are working. They come home, they only catch glimpses of it. They got to, I heard this piece, and then something later, I hear this piece. They're talking, they're making their case to two audiences, and rightly so. Just like the White House is going to be arguing to two audiences, the public and the Senate. This is our government, we the people, of, by, and for the people. This isn't Donald Trump's government. This isn't the Democratic Party's government. This isn't the Republican Party's government. It's ours. It's ours. This is not a difficult concept to grasp. Today I felt compelled to send my Republican senator an email. I felt compelled. I felt it was my duty to do so. And what did I say to him in this email? I said, Senator, I'm sure you are getting a lot of phone calls, a lot of messages, a lot of letters, and you probably have since this whole impeachment inquiry and trial commenced. But I have to say this. It is your duty, it is your obligation to put your country, our Constitution, and your oath above your party and above partisanship and above a party line vote. And I said that should not be too difficult of an ask. And if it is too difficult of an ask, you should be ashamed of yourself. I told him, because this is the truth, I voted for him, I voted for my Republican congressman, and I voted for the President of the United States. All of that is true. All of that is true. And I told my senator, I said, Senator, all I am asking for is the whole truth. For more witnesses to come forward and for other documents to be released so that the American people and the Senate have all of the facts of the case, so that they can make a true verdict. And I said, if the evidence shows that it's damning, and I do believe that it is, and that's a continuation of new witnesses and further documentation, then you convict and you remove. Likewise, if new evidence comes forward and it clearly shows exoneration, then acquit. Then acquit. That's all I'm asking for here, is the whole truth and that justice be served. That's it. That's what this country is about. It's not about Republicans. It's not about Democrats. You don't like Adam Schiff? You don't like Jerry Nadler? Guess what? Me neither. You don't like Chuck Schumer? You don't like Nancy Pelosi? Guess what? Neither do I. But I'm not too happy with how the Republican Party is just getting lockstep, coordinating with the White House, and just presumably going to vote on party lines. That they don't want to be there, they don't care, he can do whatever he wants because it's their guy. That's the problem. That's the problem, and I also noted that in my email to my senator. Because I'm sick and tired of it. And you should be too. Because this is what is destroying and dividing this country. This president isn't doing his best to unite this country. He's dividing it further with his divisive rhetoric, his language, his tweets. Constantly. Constantly. It's always the do-nothing Democrats. How can that be? Donald Trump says he's accomplished so much over his first few years in office. History-making, breathtaking, marvelous, the best. How could he have gotten all of that done without both parties? How could he have done it? So they're either do nothing or are they doing something because a lot of things have gotten done? Because you can't do everything by executive order. Although, if the president is acquitted with the facts and evidence that was as we know it today, if he is acquitted, then a precedent will have been created that allows the president, for all intents and purposes, to do whatever he wants by executive order. The Senate would basically have abdicated the entirety of their power, of their service of checks and balances, their moral and solemn obligation to this country, to their constituents, to our Constitution. It's gone. Go ahead, Mr. Trump. Do what you got to do. And I think the House managers did a fantastic job today, as they have over the past couple of days, laying out the facts of the case, laying out historical precedent, quoting founding fathers, quoting past presidents, quoting past and previous justices on the Supreme Court, anybody who has dealt with anything related to impeachment or the idea of impeachment. This is not just about convicting and removal. It is also about prevention. Prevention of a runaway, out-of-control executive. And the question you have to ask yourself, will the president do this again or something like it or something worse? I have stated to this audience honestly, like I honestly give you everything. Yes, he will. Yes, he will. He will feel emboldened. And why wouldn't he? He has a Justice Department with a long-held precedent that they will not indict a president while he is president. Now, if the Senate acquits on the evidence that is thus far known, based off a defense and argument that states an abuse of power is not an impeachable offense, then what remedy do we have? What remedy do the people have against their president? Now, again, now we have the election. But that's not how it's supposed to work in this regard. That's about policy. That's about policy. That's not about breaking the law. That's not about abuse of power. The reason impeachment exists is for that very reason. To remove a president because he has abused his power. There has been some sort of crime committed. And that an election cannot wait. That's the problem. And I would love to give the President of the United States the benefit of the doubt that he didn't do this, that this is beneath him to call up a country who is an ally and to ask them to do him a political favor, because that's exactly what he asked. And his counsel will most likely be attacking Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler, the process, Nancy Pelosi, perhaps Chuck Schumer, maybe not. He's a senator, maybe not. But most definitely the House managers and some others. Most definitely they will. In an attempt to distraction, in an attempt to divert. Not to tell you the truth. I hope they have some other precedent. I hope they do have some other things that can show some type of exoneration, but I doubt it. I really doubt it. And by their defense, we will know. Because if that's all they're going to do is attack, 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 deny, 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 and repeat, 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 then they have no defense. And that's the Trumpian way of doing things. Dig in, double down, triple down. It's enough. Ladies and gentlemen, it's enough. And this is coming from somebody who voted for the man. Because Hillary Clinton, in my mind, was going to be status quo, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, and the status quo could not stand. I did not vote for this. I did not vote for this divisiveness. I did not vote for this rhetoric. I didn't. We talk about the economics here all the time. You just want to listen to Thunder Thumbs and his Twitter account, then yeah, you're going to think this is the greatest economy ever. If you want to pay attention to the actual numbers and do a little digging beneath the surface, beneath the headlines, then you know better. And this audience should know better. That this is a fraud. That a central bank is printing money basically because that's what the President of the United States wants. And that's because that's what central banks do. So it's a double whammy. I voted for the guy because when he was a candidate, he was talking about how they were creating bubble after bubble. How it was a wealth transfer. How it was problematic to the country. Now he wants them. He wants negative interest rates. It's outright theft from you. It's outright theft. I can't tolerate that. I can't stand for that. Cut government spending, which means draining the swamp? No. Government spending is up. Big time. $1 trillion deficits. Again. We're going to have more $1 trillion deficits as far as the eye can see. Not even being discussed. Not in a serious way. Not in a serious manner. And it's not likely going to be either. You might hear some rally cries. You might hear some tidbits here or there. You're going to get your TV tease. Ooh, there's going to be some payroll tax cuts or middle income class, tax cuts. Something's coming this year, blah, 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 blah. Why'd you wait so long? Why'd you wait so long? What's going on? And how are you going to pay for it? You're going to cut spending? Because this is why we have $1 trillion deficit. Because you might have put more money in my right pocket just to take more out of my left. And that's not good. No sirree, Bob. It's not how it works. You're going to cut taxes, fantastic, but cut spending too. I doubt that's going to take place because that'll hurt GDP, at least in the short term. And we can't have that now, can we? We can't put country and principle ahead of GDP figures and all these economic BS numbers, can we? Nope, can't do that. Can't do that. So I think the House managers stated their case. I think they made their final closing argument from Adam Schiff, basically preparing the public and the U.S. Senate for what the White House counsel will be arguing. When you hear argument X from them, remember that's not true. Remember in the back of your mind the context, the full story of it. When they mention argument Y, remember this story, remember this context, remember the whole thing, remember the whole picture, because it's going to be about distraction. And I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know the legality or the ethics of how far out when it comes to mischaracterization or exaggeration or outright lies that counsel on either side, the House managers or the White House counsel, can state. I mean, I don't know if the Bar Association can sanction them. I don't know. But I imagine that there's going to be some falsehoods, some outright falsehoods from the White House counsel. And why wouldn't they? Look who they're representing. It's a continuation. It's an outright continuation. On the White House Twitter feed, which of course is taxpayer funded, there's a whole bunch of partisan rhetoric being put out from that. That should just basically be the facts. Just the facts. Who's the president hosting? What's going on? That's it. There should be no partisanship, no politics coming from that Twitter account. We're paying for it. It should not come from that. That's it. Just what's the president's schedule? What's, the first lady doing? That type of stuff. That type of stuff. I have no problem with that. Donald Trump wants to come out and make his arguments. Let him do it on his Twitter account. Okay? The press secretary, she wants to come out and do it. Go ahead. Do it on your Twitter account. For the love of God, woman, come out and do a presser. I mean, she's been there for almost a year, maybe even over a year now, and she hasn't given a press conference. She goes on Fox News all the time. Answer some questions from somebody else. Most transparent administration, my you-know-what. Give me a break. You can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. Resign, leave. Put somebody else in there who's going to answer some questions. The American people deserve to know. So the Democrats, again, I think they made a compelling argument for both articles of impeachment, quite frankly, the abuse of power and the obstruction of Congress. I mean, they even laid out the case that even Richard Nixon gave in and released documents. President Trump, it's a complete blanket. It's a complete blanket order. Nobody from the executive branch is going to release any document whatsoever. This has never happened in the history of our country. Never. Never. Wonder if it has to do with the belief that President Trump thinks that Article 2 of the Constitution gives him the ability, the power to do whatever he wants. Not so, Mr. President. You should read it again and once again. You know, and there was some other things on Twitter that I was watching, trying to get, some of the conservative flavor of it. And you have Dan Bongino again basically saying, well, look, folks, the aid to Ukraine was given before the deadline. Hashtag idiots, of course, calling anybody who believes the facts of the case idiots, and more likely Democrats. More power to Dan Bongino. He's built himself a good audience, sells some books, all that stuff. More power to him. But now it looks like the money that he's made has gotten to his head. He knows who his audience is, and that's just simply what he's going to cater to. It's a shame. Lost a lot of respect for him with this case, with this impeachment inquiry, and now with the trial. The reason why the Ukrainian aid was given before the deadline was because the president and his cronies got caught. That's the timeline. Black and white. Oh, damn. There's a whistleblower. No quid pro quo, Ambassador Sondland. No quid pro quo. I want nothing. I want Zelensky just to do the right thing. It's not what he was saying before that, but after he got caught. After he got caught. The other argument maybe from the White House counsel would be that of bribery. There was no bribe. No harm, no foul. They got the aid. They got what they needed. They got what they wanted. They also wanted a White House visit to show support to the Ukrainian people and to the Russians. They didn't get that yet. They didn't get that yet, so they didn't get everything. And it's not about no harm, no foul. If you attempt to rob a bank, but you get caught in the act, you think they're just going to let you go home to mommy? Give me a break. They are asking you to put away your common sense. Don't let that happen. Please don't let that happen. I am not saying that President Trump is beyond a doubt guilty. I'm still keeping an open mind, waiting for new witnesses and new documentation to come forward. And if it exonerates the man, like I said to the senator, like I've said to this audience on numerous occasions, then so be it. But let the people know, because people are so divided. This country is so divided. And if you have exonerating, exculpatory evidence, Mr. President, release it. It should have been released months ago. Months ago. And of course, today, again, he's complaining on Twitter because his side of the aisle is going to be, his counsel is going to be making arguments on a Saturday, which is not good for TV. Of course, the reality TV star host is more concerned about the ratings than he is about the truth. Surprise, surprise. This is what this is coming down to, ladies and gentlemen. This is why this genuinely has me concerned. Because the House members made the argument today that some of the legal rationale behind the Justice Department creating a precedent that says that they will not indict a sitting president of the United States is based off of their belief in the power of impeachment. Well, if you remove that second block of impeachment because you acquit the president, because the argument is an abuse of power is not an impeachable offense, then there is no remedy. None. Or the legal argument, that precedent that is in existence within the Justice Department, is now null and void. So it can't have it both ways. This is why impeachment exists. Again, it's not just to acquit or to convict and remove. It's not just that. It's to prevent. It's to prevent. Because if a president walks into office on day one and abuses his or her power, what's the remedy? We have to wait 3 more years, 4 more years until their election? That's ridiculous. There is no way our founding fathers would have tolerated that. That would have been their reasoning, their rationale. There's too much common sense, wisdom, and prudence amongst those men. There's no way. So that's what we're supposed to say now, is that's going to be the cop-out by the Republicans? Well, we're 9-10 months away from an election. Let's let the American people do it. No, this is your job. This is your job. If you don't like that it's a difficult decision, then you shouldn't have signed up to become a senator. Because most of them are spineless anyway. And I told my senator he will lose my respect and he will lose my vote if he does not vote to have further witnesses come forward and further documentation. If the president is so sure of himself, if his defense counsel is so sure of themselves and the president, then release the documents. Furthermore, you have to. You have to. And if you paid close attention and you listened to the legal arguments by prior justices on the Supreme Court, by arguments from the founding fathers, the impeachment power, a president of the United States has to comply. Has to comply. And even the House manager said there's wiggle room. There's areas for negotiation. If there is a legitimate national security claim, we can remove that. We can work around it. It's not as if they're saying give us 100% of everything and that you can't claim executive privilege here or there, or that you cannot claim national security. There is room for negotiation. The Republicans want to argue, well, you should have taken it to the courts. Well, I think the House managers put a good show on, put a good presentation of precedent, of how long it can take in an investigation to demand somebody come forward and testify or release documents. It can take years, literally years. So again, do you think that would be the wisdom of the founding fathers, to allow somebody go unchecked who presumably has committed a crime or an abuse of their power to go unchecked until the courts have their day, which could take years? There's no way. There's no way. Too much wisdom, prudence, and common sense amongst our founding fathers for that to have been the case. This is why impeachment exists. And as it stands today with the facts and evidence, he committed a crime, both of them. He abused his power, and he is obstructing Congress. It's clear as day that he's obstructing Congress. They don't have anything. They don't have all these other documents. The Republicans were screaming foul during the impeachment inquiry. Where's the first-hand fact witnesses? Why don't you ask the President of the United States? Where are all of these other documents? Why don't you ask the President of the United States? He has them. They can be turned over, and they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be, because there is damn sure enough evidence to compel at this point that this is not just some sort of hoax, just some sort of witch hunt. And that's the Democrats' fault for going after this guy from day one to the degree in which they had. Because that has caused division in this country. And that has caused a lack of credibility on their side. Because both sides of the aisle, both parties, are the little boy who's cried wolf. Everybody thought Mueller was going to nail him. Have him dead to rights. Didn't happen. Now, well, Trump and them, they can just push it off. See, we told you it's just a hoax. It's Trump derangement syndrome. It's all this, that, and blah, 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 blah. And what have I been saying here for almost a year now? The credibility of the President of the United States is shot. So now anything that he comes out and says, nobody on the other side is going to believe either. Remember the podcast? Who to believe? Truth, lies, what difference does it make? That's the state of our republic. At least, at the very least, maybe send a message to your senators. Just ask for the whole truth, man. Just do it. It's not too much to ask for, is it? It's your job to be there, so be there. It's not like you were doing much of anything else to begin with. This is a serious process. At least allow the whole truth to be known. And if it's guilty, then convict and remove. And if it's exoneration, then acquit. But don't do it down party lines. Honor your country, honor your oath, honor your Constitution. We deserve it. Enjoy your weekend, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be back next week. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Karitis. Godspeed.